Well, welcome to the Get Licensed to Build, our free online workshop for those who want to get their California contractor's license. Our goal this morning is to go through all the different parts of the license application and to give you some practical tips to help you complete it correctly and to give you every opportunity to demonstrate your experience and qualifications to get your California contractor's license. We also want to help you get ready for the licensing exams and to give you a link to a video that shows you exactly what to expect on your test day. Today's webcast is presented by the Contractor State License Board, the government agency responsible for regulating California's construction industry. My name is Rick Lopes. I am joined today by Anna Rodriguez. Good morning, Anna. Anna, you have to turn off your...
Good morning. Good morning, Rick.
There's an auspicious start for us. Okay. We're also joined here at the beginning of our workshop by Susan Granzella. Ms. Granzella is one of our board members and this year serves as our board vice chair. And in case you didn't know, overseen by a 15-member board that directs administrative policy and our operations. Our board is made up of 10 public members, including one labor representative, one local building official, and one representative of a statewide senior citizen organization, and 5 contractors. Appointments are made by the governor and the state legislature. Ms. Granzella, who is from Sacramento, was appointed to our board in October of 2014 and reappointed this past July. She's held several positions at Visa Incorporated from 1996 until her retirement in 2014, including Vice President and Senior Director for Technical Documentation and Audit and Compliance for Global Development. In that former role, Ms. Granzella managed Visa's technical writing and publishing efforts, distributing content internationally to banks and processors, and managing staff and contractors in the United States, Singapore, and India. In addition to serving on our board, Ms. Granzella also serves on the board of directors for the My Sister's House, that is a safe haven for Asian and Pacific Islander women and children in Sacramento. She joins us to welcome you all to our workshop. Good morning, Susan.
Good morning. I didn't realize I would get that great introduction. So thank you. I thought I was going to have to introduce myself. Can you hear that okay?
We can hear you just fine, yeah. And if you can go ahead and mute your microphone, but we can hear you fine, Susan.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you. It's great to be here this morning. Welcome to everyone. This is a great program to get licensed to build. And as Rick mentioned, I'm a public member of the Contractor State License Board. So first, I wanted to thank you for taking the time to prepare for this big step, to learn more about the opportunities that you'll have at CSLB. So it's a great step. Well, technically, I'm not in the construction industry. What Rick was suggesting is that I relay some of the experiences that I have, which have been extensive in hiring and working with a contractor or contractors. And when I was first appointed to the board in 2014, I had just finished my first contracting job, which was an extensive one, took everything down to the studs. And I had a contractor come in and work on that. Fast forward to CSLB, when I joined, they said, well, what was your experience with a contractor? And I said, perfect. And they said, really? Can you describe it? And what I relayed to them was I went into it knowing nothing. I knew nothing. And he was experienced. He brought in talented subcontractors that he knew through his CSLB connections. He was great at suggesting enhancements. He also was very good about diplomatically telling me no when I had what I thought were great ideas. But the bottom line was, at the end of the day, he said he'd be finished at 5 minutes to 5. When he had his toolbox ready to go, he was punching in the time on the new stove in this large area that he had remodeled. And it was amazing because it was perfect. And so what happens is that we used him more for larger jobs, and it continued to be a collaborative effort. It continued to be one where he was caring. He also followed up, 2 or 3 weeks after the job is done. He calls and says, how is it? And, so he has the experience. He was talented enough to bring a lot to the job. So it really expanded what I needed, what his customers needed. So that's my spiel about my contractor. So this is a great industry to be involved in. There are countless opportunities, as I mentioned, all the things that could have happened. And no matter what your interest or abilities are, there are so many opportunities. You can be a general contractor and build a house, or you can be a general contractor and do a huge remodel job, which is what my contractor has done several times. You can be an engineering contractor and you can join projects where you're building skyscrapers, bridges, freeways. That's an entirely different direction. Or you can work for yourself, being a plumber, electrician, HVAC, or a solar installer, painter. Many different classifications are offered. So it doesn't matter whether you want to be a one-person operation, you don't want to be part of a larger group, you can be a one-person operation, or you can set your sights on having a few employees or even building a larger company. The opportunities are really unlimited in this. So right now, it may seem like a daunting task getting your license. You may have heard stories. I am sure that it looks like a lot of work, but if you have the experience to qualify for a license and you know what you're doing, which I'm sure all of you do know what you're doing, and you can demonstrate in an exam or a series of exams that you should qualify for the license, then you can do it. I know you can do it. You'll be just fine. And that's why these seminars are set up, so that task of having to fill out forms or follow up or get the right documentation, they'll tell you how to do it. So it's a lot easier. So in today's workshop, they're going to do their best to help you understand what it is that you need to do. And I also recommend spending a lot of time, if you can, on the CSLB website, because that is what I had to do to be confirmed by the Senate and all others, because they were asking questions about CSLB beyond my limited scope. So I explored the website, and it has a great deal of information, study guides, and information that will help you on your way. So that's my story, and I wish you all the best of luck in this new exciting career for you. So thank you very much for having me, Rick and Anna.
Great. Thanks very much, Susan.
Thanks.
Nice to have you with us. Okay, what we're going to do now, we're going to go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of our presentation this morning. So what Anna and I are going to do, and Susan, if you're going to stick around a little bit, you're certainly more than welcome. We're going to turn off our cameras so we can kind of focus on the presentation and not the fact that you're staring at us. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, please note, after a 3-month closure due to COVID-19, 7 of CSLB's 8 test centers reopened in mid-June. We're working as quickly as we can to get through the backlog of exams that built up during that closure, and we're administering about 1,000 exams every week. One of the things that makes it tough, though, is that on any given day, between 10 and 20% of our applicants fail to show up to take their test. So as you move through the process, be sure that you're good with your test date. Write it down, put it on your calendar, don't blow it off. Not only is that going to delay you getting your license, you're also going to delay another applicant who would have been in that spot who's trying to get their license. Also, if you're watching right now on either YouTube Live or Facebook Live and you want to participate, you need to switch over to WebEx. And to do that, just go to a banner at the top of our homepage, which is cslb.ca.gov. You can click on the register and you can get right into WebEx if you have questions you want to ask. If you want to just stay there on YouTube or Facebook and just watch, that's great. You can stay there, nothing else to do. Also, we would encourage you to go to that same banner on the top of our homepage and download the presentation to follow along. Or you can just watch now and download it after we wrap up. And you also get clickable bonus links that appear on slides throughout that presentation that will get you to a lot of other information.
So we're going to be presenting a lot of information this morning, so don't worry if you don't get it all. We will archive this video of the workshop and put it on our YouTube channel, so you can go back and watch it again if necessary. To ask a question, use the Q&A feature at the bottom right of your screen. Make sure you send your questions to all panelists. We tend to get a lot of questions during these workshops on how to document your work experience and what credit you can get for your education or military service. The questions are fine, but we would ask that you wait to send us all your questions until after you see that part of the workshop, just in case we answer it during that part. We will go through all of your questions at the end of our presentation. CSLB is trying to identify resources out there specifically targeted to encourage women to get a career in construction. If you have any resources you think we should know about, please drop us an email at social@cslb.ca.gov. We will repeat that address at the end of today's workshop. If you want the list of resources we have put together so far, be sure to download this presentation. We have added a list of those resources we've already identified at the end of that file.
The information obtained during this webcast is not, nor is it intended to be legal advice. While the webcast contains general information, including legal guidelines for contractor license applications, it does not contain definitive statements of law and may not reflect the most current legal developments in the construction industry. Such guidelines communicated or discussed during this webcast are for informational purposes only. If you do have questions about the application of the law for specific situations, you should contact an attorney who's familiar with California construction law, or review the 2020 edition of the CSLB publication, California Contractors License Law and Reference Book. You can download it for free on the CSLB website or purchase it directly from the publisher, LexisNexis. Both of those links are at the bottom of and on the bonus links that you get when you download the presentation.
We also want to thank you for answering the few questions we asked when you registered. It gave us a lot of useful information. Here's what we can tell you about the folks registered for today's workshop. 43% say they plan to apply for a general building contractor's license, followed by general engineer contractor, electrical contractor, landscape contractor, concrete contractor, and flooring. 33% plan to apply as a sole ownership, 24% as a limited liability company, 15% as a corporation, and 28% are still not sure. We'll talk more about the different business entities in a couple of minutes.
And right now we've got, I think we had just about 600 people signed up for this, and we've got just under 200 online with us right now. And just over half the people who did register for today's workshop plan to be the license qualifier. That number drops down to less than 1% who plan to use either a responsible managing employee, responsible managing officer, or a relative to qualify the license. Don't worry if you're not too familiar with those terms. We will talk about those in a few minutes. 1/3 of the people aren't sure yet who's going to be qualifying their license. And we'll also talk a lot about qualifiers. Half of you plan to apply for your license in the next month. More than 3/4 of you plan to apply for your license within the next 3 months.
So here's a list of what we're going to cover today. We will take you through the process for applying for your California contractor's license. First, who needs a license? Why get a contractor's license? The minimum qualifications you'll need to get a license, the type of business entities, the different CSLB classifications. We will spend a lot of time giving you tips to fill out your application, including how to demonstrate your work experience to meet the minimum qualifications. We will also talk about fingerprint requirements for a criminal background check. We will help get ready for the exam or exams you'll need to pass in order to get your license. And finally, the other things you'll need to have in place before your license is issued, things like bond and insurance.
So first today, we'll take a look at who needs a license. Here in California, a state contractor's license is needed for all construction projects priced at $500 or more, and that total includes both labor and materials. The law doesn't let you break down the project into $499 pieces. It's the entire project. Also, you can't charge an hourly rate to get around the $500 threshold. If the hourly cost times the number of hours the job is going to take totals $500 or more, you need to have a state contractor's license. So what's the definition of a contractor? That definition comes from the state's Business and Professions Code. In this case, it's section 7026.1. We've got a link to that code at the top of the page so you can download when you download the presentation. I'll read the entire code, but pay special attention to the part that we've underlined on the screen. A contractor is any person, consultant to an owner building firm, association, organization, partnership, business trust, corporation, or company who or which undertakes, offers to undertake, purports to have the capacity to undertake, or submits a bid to construct any building or home improvement project or part thereof. So in other words, you don't have to do the work to break the law. You must have a contractor's license just to advertise the construction work, or even to give a bid for a construction job if that bid is going to be more than $500 or more.
So you may be asking yourself why you should get a license. Here are a few good reasons. First, You can take pride in being a licensed professional. It shows you've taken the steps to get licensed and that you are serious about your career choice. It also allows you to make valuable contributions to your local community. Unlicensed contractors must operate in the shadows and cannot help make their community a better place to live. Next, it allows you to get paid for the work that you do. There is a value to the work done by a licensed professional. Being licensed also gives you legal options if customers don't pay you. Unlicensed contractors do not have a legal right to take someone to court to get paid because the work required a license and they weren't licensed to do the work in the first place. Also, you would be able to use the mechanic lien laws. Next, you don't have to look over your shoulder with the fear of getting caught. Contracting without a valid California license can lead to misdemeanor charges. Those caught face a first offense sentence of up to 6 months in jail and/or a $5,000 fine, and potential administrative fines anywhere in between $200 to $15,000. Subsequent violations can result in increased criminal penalties and fines. In addition, you may face felony charges if you contract without a license when one is required in a state or federally declared disaster area, or if you try to pass yourself off as a licensed contractor by illegally using a license number. Remember, there are no educational requirements to get a license. Also, you do not have to go to a license preparation school to get your contractor's license.
Okay, I don't know, folks, if you're hearing that. I was having a little trouble with Anna's audio. So if anybody wants to send me a text message or even in the questions, let me know if you're hearing Anna fine or if we need to deal with her audio. It might just be me, but we'll go ahead and continue. So what do you need to get your license? First, it's important to understand that CSLB does not license individuals. We license companies or businesses, also called entities. Many entities are one-person operations. But know that every entity, even a one-person operation, must have a qualifier. That's someone who has the minimum experience and is responsible for the operations of the company. So here's a short list of the minimum qualifications that you'll need. You must be at least 18 years old. You must have either a valid Social Security number or a valid Individual Taxpayer Identification Number, or ITIN. You can qualify your license in one of two ways. First, you can qualify the license by having at least 4 years experience within the last 10 years as a journeyman, foreperson, supervising employee, or a contractor in the trade being applied for. Or you can get a qualifier for the license who has the required experience. And we'll spend a lot of time talking about just how you can demonstrate your experience on your application in just a few minutes.
So it looks like they can hear me, Rick, but let me know if you need me to do anything, okay? It may be possible for you to substitute your education, technical training, and apprenticeship training for some of the required experience. We tend to get a lot of questions about this. First, CSLB cannot prejudge your experience. We can only review your documents after you apply for your license. Next, to get education credit, the coursework must be directly related to the work you will be doing as a contractor. Your education cannot be substituted for more than 3 years or 36 months of the required experience, meaning you will need to have at least 1 year of practical experience if you get the full 36 months of education credit. To apply for education credit, you must provide CSLB written documentation. That means a copy of any apprenticeship completion certificates that you have, or official technical school or college transcripts. You want to get those transcripts sent to you, but do not open the envelope. Leave it sealed and include it with your application packet. Note, the high school courses will not earn you any credit towards your contractor license.
If you're looking to get education credit to meet the minimum qualifications, this is probably the most important slide of the entire workshop. This is the kind of credit that you can expect to receive for your education. Note that for some of the areas, we're only giving you averages, or you'll see that the credit will be determined on a case-by-case basis. We're not going to be able to give you any more guidance than what you're able to see on the slide. So our best advice is not to rely on those credits and experience to barely hit the 4-year experience mark, because there's always the possibility that you're not going to get as much education credit as you were hoping for. Okay, the first type of credit is for a degree in construction management. A bachelor's degree is going to get you the full 36 months of credit. An associate's degree will get you 18 months of credit. A law degree will get you 24 months of credit. A bachelor's degree in some other major will get you an average Again, an average of 18 months credits. An associate's degree in some other major will get you an average credit of 6 months. Credit for individual college classes are given on a case-by-case basis, usually a maximum of 6 months of credit. Apprenticeship completion certificates will get you between 24 and 36 months, depending on the classification of the program. For example, a sheet metal worker apprenticeship will get you 24 months credit for the C20 HVAC and the C43 sheet metal classifications only. A lineman apprenticeship will get you 36 months in a C7 low voltage or a C10 electrical classification only. Now, if you have the transcripts for other technical training you've taken, you might be able to get some minimal credit as well. Again, don't use your education credits to try to squeak by with that 4-year requirement. Also, if you've served in the military, some of that service might count as well. On this page, you'll see a bonus link to our CSLB Military Application Assistance Program where you can learn more. The license qualifier must also pass 2 different exams, and both are taken on computers at one of CSLB's test centers. One exam is on California business law. The other is on the specific trade covered by the license. We also have limited specialty licenses, which we'll discuss later. Those licenses only require the qualifier to take the law and business exam.
As we mentioned, the qualifier is the one who must take and pass the required exams or qualify for a waiver. We're not going to spend a lot of time on the waiver, only to note that you might be able to request a waiver from taking one or both of your exams if very specific situations occur. We recommend that you look at the CSLB website for more information on the specific situations. We have included a bonus link at the bottom of the page. The qualifier must also undergo the criminal background check. We will go more in depth on that in a few minutes. After the license is issued, the qualifier must be in a position to exercise direct supervision and control of the company's operation. They are also responsible for all workmanship issues. It is also important to note here that if you are trying to get a B, General Building Contractor license, and you hire subcontractors to work under you, you are responsible as a project's prime contractor for the work that they do.
The next thing we're going to be doing that you'll need to do is to determine before applying for the license is which type of entity your business is going to be. There are 4 types. First is a sole ownership, where the owner or responsible managing employee may serve as the qualifier. Just about 2/3 of the contracting businesses in California right now are sole ownerships. The second is a corporation, where either of the current officers designated as the responsible managing officer or the responsible managing employee may serve as the qualifier. Just under 1/3 of our licensees are corporations. A distant third is partnerships, where either of the 2 general partners or a responsible managing employee may serve as the qualifier. That's about 2% of our licensees. And finally is a limited liability company, or LLC, where a responsible managing member, a responsible managing manager, responsible managing officer, or responsible managing employee may serve as a qualifier. About 1.5% of California construction companies right now are LLCs.
Now let's talk about license classifications. A contractor's license can include multiple classifications, although you must select one when filling out your application. While there are more than 40 license classifications in California, they all fall under 3 distinct categories. There is a bonus link to our classification list at the bottom of this screen here. First is our Class A, or general engineering contractors. These are the contractors who deal with fixed works that require specialized engineering knowledge and skill. A contractors are the ones who build projects such as freeways, skyscrapers, and dams. Today, there are just over 19,000 A contractors in the state. Next is our Class B, or general building contractors. This is the largest class of contractors in California, with more than 133,000. B contractors have a principal business dealing with any structure built, being built, or to be built that requires as part of its construction at least 2 unrelated building trades or crafts. In other words, a B contractor shouldn't take a prime contract for any project involving trades other than framing or carpentry unless the prime contract requires at least 2 unrelated building trades other than framing or carpentry. There is no limitation on B contractors to stop them from taking on projects that only include framing or carpentry. The final class is our C, or specialty contractors. These licenses are for construction work that requires special skill and whose principal contracting business involves the use of specialized building trades or crafts. Examples of this include our C10 electrical contractors, C20 HVAC contractors, C27 landscaping contractors, C33 plumbing contractors, C39 roofing contractors, C46 solar contractors, and C53 swimming pool contractors, just to name a few. There are also 30 limited specialty classes under the C61 classification. These include the C61/D49 Tree Service Limited class. More than 209,000 contractors hold a C license in California.
Okay, here's a look now at the two forms you're going to need for your application. On the left, you'll see the license application. On the right is the certification of work experience. You can get these forms on the CSLB website. There's a bonus link there at the bottom of the page, so be sure to download the presentation. We'll give you a closer look at the different sections of these forms a little later. Okay, let's break down the different steps now for the application process. The first thing you want to do is to identify who is going to be the qualifier for your license. If you're using an RME or responsible managing employee as your qualifier, determine if he or she can qualify for an exam waiver. Next, make sure you complete the correct application. There are two options. One is an application for the original contractor's license, and the second is the application for the original contractor's license examination waiver 7065. The next step is to determine your company name. Take a look at the application for examples. And something, your name cannot be misleading or imply that you qualify for a license classification other than the one you're getting. For example, if you're going to apply for a C36 plumbing license, you can't have a name like John Smith Plumbing, Construction, Heating, and Drywall. It just has to be tied to the license classification you have. Next, corporate and LLC names must match exactly the name registered with the California Secretary of State's office. And the names of everyone on your Secretary of State registration must be listed on your CSLB application. You can also use what's called a DBA, which stands for Doing Business As. The main things to remember here is that the DBA name cannot be misleading, and it must be used in all of the advertising and all of your contracts. Another thing to note too is you can use your name as your name if you choose to. That is an option for you.
Next, you want to get together certifications to support your work experience. You should do this even if you apply for an exam waiver. Feel free to use multiple pages if necessary. Next, be sure to note if you are a military veteran. Some of your military service may be used to meet your 4 years of experience qualification. Also, your application may be expedited through our Military Application Assistance Program. There is a bonus link at the bottom of the screen for more information on that program. To participate, you must have had an honorable discharge. Be sure to include a copy of your military DD-214 paperwork showing your honorable discharge with your application. The next couple of items are basic, but important. Proofread any missing information. Make sure you have provided an answer to all necessary fields. Second, don't forget to sign and date the application. Finally, determine if you need a special accommodation to take your exams. If so, complete a request form and submit with your application. We'll talk about the use of a translator a little bit later in the presentation.
Next is a closer look at our fingerprint requirements, which are used for criminal background checks. This is a list of those who must submit a full set of fingerprints to CSLB, depending on the type of business entity. First is all applicants. Next is each corporate officer, each partner, each owner, the responsible managing employee, and all home improvement salespersons. If you're in California, you must submit fingerprints electronically with what's called LiveScan. You can get an updated list of LiveScan locations around California broken down by county on the Attorney General's website. We've got that link here, or you can simply go to the Attorney General's website and search for LiveScan. You'll also see that we have a link at the bottom of the screen for the fingerprint information page on our CSLB website. If you're out of state, it's going to be a little bit tough for you to get us your fingerprints. We'll just be up front with you. That's because you must submit hard copies of them the old-fashioned way. Those take anywhere between 3 and 6 months for the FBI and Department of Justice to process. So when things settle down with the COVID-19 health emergency, you might want to actually consider traveling to California. That way you can get an electronic live scan done here.
So what happens if you do have a criminal conviction? CSLB may deny your license for the following reasons. First, if your conviction is substantially related to the duties, functions, and qualifications of a contractor. Also, if your conviction involves fraud or a violent crime. There are other factors CSLB will consider. They are the nature and severity of the crime, the amount of time that has passed since the conviction, and any evidence of rehabilitation that you submit to CSLB. CSLB evaluates felony criminal convictions within 7 years of the application date. So for applications filed this year, we're going to look back to 2013. For misdemeanor criminal convictions, we would look back for 3 years of the application date. So we would look back to 2017. That's unless the convictions are for a violent felony, certain sexual crimes, or financial crimes related to construction. CSLB denies only 1% of the total applications we get based on criminal convictions.
All right, and along with the education credits we talked about a little earlier, this next section is probably the most important of the entire workshop, and it's the part of the application that causes the most headaches for applicants. Okay, here we go. It's how you demonstrate your work experience on your application. Remember, the license qualifier needs 4 years of experience within the past 10 years in the classification for which you're applying. That means at least 4 years of experience since 2010. The experience must be at no less than a journeyman level or as a foreman, supervising employee, contractor, or owner builder. A journeyman is defined as an experienced worker who is fully qualified, as opposed to a trainee, and they can perform the trade without supervision, or one who has completed an apprenticeship program.
So there is a limited amount of space on the application to show your certified work experience. So feel free, if you need to use additional pages, if needed, that's fine. Simply attach them to the end of the work experience form. Use as many certifications of work experience forms that you need to in order to prove the 4 years of experience within the last 10 years. Use a different form for each certifier. Be as accurate as possible. Make sure the person certifying your work describes the actual work you performed and the dates in which you performed them. We will now be providing some examples of both good and unacceptable descriptions to demonstrate work experience. Do not copy and paste this information directly into your application. These are just examples.
You've been warned. Okay. At the top of the chart is the classification we're going to be showing you, the type of experience you're trying to demonstrate. So the first example is going to be for a journey person experience. The overall theme that we're going to keep repeating is the more specific the description, the better. Note that the work experience form should be completed by your certifier. That's someone who has the knowledge and who has observed your work experience for the classification that you're applying for. And that person does not have to be a licensed contractor.
Our first example is for the Class B general building contractor. The best type of description your certifier would use for journey person experience is to be specific. Journey person experience must include hands-on work like this. Bob performed rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior-exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. An unacceptable description would be something generic like this. Residential general building trades. For a 4-person experience, the description must include some hands-on work and/or some supervisory work. Here's an example of the best type of description. Bob oversaw other staff at job site performing rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior-exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. Again, something unacceptable would be something like this. Residential general building trades. So you can see what we're looking for is to be more specific. For a supervising employee experience, the description should include an explanation of how you arrived at that supervisory level. An example is, as a construction lead on multiple projects, Bob supervised rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior-exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. Again, something unacceptable would be something more generic like this. Residential general building trades. For out-of-state contractor experience, the description must include examples of work done that were out of the state, military, or on federal lands, or work for a government entity. Applicants can qualify as a journey person, or as a 4-person, or as a supervising employee. A tip. Be specific about the duties and the employment circumstances. Our next example is a C27 landscaping contractor. First, for experience at a journeyman level. The best type of description your certifier would use would be something like this. Jane performed landscape construction maintenance and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips, and pathways and tree pruning. An unacceptable explanation would be something more generic like this. Gardening, yard maintenance, planting. For a C20 landscaping contractor, the best work experience description for a four-person would be something like this. Jane oversaw staff at job site performing landscape construction, maintenance and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips, and pathways and tree pruning. An unacceptable description again would be something like this. Gardening, yard maintenance, planting. For a C27 supervising employee, the description should include an explanation of how you arrived at that supervisor level. The best description would be, as a construction lead on multiple projects, applicant supervised landscape construction, maintenance, and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips, and pathways and tree pruning. Unacceptable here for the supervising employee would also be something like gardening, yard maintenance, planting. Finally, for our out-of-state contractors, the same guidance that we showed you for general building contractors apply. Be sure to include examples of your out-of-state work, as well as work for the military or on federal land or for a government entity. Be sure to be specific when you describe your duties and employment circumstances. Now, by law, CSLB must randomly review and verify all the information provided on at least 3% of the applications that we receive. Our next 3 slides run down the acceptable documentation that you can use to support your work experience in the event that your application is selected and you were asked to provide additional documentation. Now, this documentation should not be mailed in with your application. You're only going to need to provide this information if your application is selected and you are informed by a CSLB staff member that you need to send in supporting documentation. On the lower right of the screen, you'll see a link to this publication on our website, along with additional information on experience documentation. If you look at the chart, you can see that the first column is for documents you can use if you were employed by a licensed contractor. The second column is for documenting your experience if you've been self-employed. That third column there is for documentation you will need if you're applying for a Class B general building contractor license and you need to use owner-builder experience to meet that requirement. Here's the next page of acceptable documentation. Again, you can click on the link to view and print this publication. Here is the final page of acceptable documentation that we will accept. If you do not have this information readily available, you may want to begin to gather it now, just in case you are asked to provide it in the future. Remember, you're trying to demonstrate that you have 4 years of experience within the last 10 years. CSLB staff may contact the certifier of experience or other parties to verify the information you've provided.
One other note, CSLB does get more than 1,000 applications a month, so our application processing's seen it all. So they've got 2 pieces of advice to share with you. First, don't cut and paste information from the presentation. They know what we're talking about today. Also, don't try to get around having to take a trade test by applying for multiple subcategories under the C61 limited specialty classification. That's a way you would only have to take the law and business exam. So don't try to do that to get around the laws. Okay, that's the content that you will need to fill out your application. Before getting it to CSLB, double check to make sure you didn't miss anything. And very important, be sure you sign and date it as well. Also, don't forget to include the all-important $330 application fee. You'll pay the $200 initial license fee after you pass your exam or exams. Then put your application package in the mail to CSLB, or you can hand deliver it to one of our public counters. And we have a bonus link at the bottom of the screen to those office locations.
Okay, so now that we've gone through the information you'll need to include, here's a closer look at the application itself so that you can see where it goes. Here is section 1. Section 1 is where you're going to list your business name. Remember, when selecting a business name, you want to make sure that your name that you have selected is compatible with the classification and the entity that you are applying for. And you don't want it to be misleading. So if your business is a corporation or an LLC, you're going to need to make sure that the name that you have provided already to the Secretary of State matches what you're putting in this section here. We do verify the record, so you want to make sure it matches exactly the business name that you've registered. In line 2 is where you're going to indicate what classification you are applying for. The mailing address and phone number that you list here on line 3A and 3C will be made public on CSLB's website once you are licensed. The next section is section 2, business entity. In this section, you will select your business entity. If you are applying for a corporation or an LLC, you're going to need to provide your registration number provided to you by the Secretary of State. Make sure to pay extra attention to the instructions in this section pertaining to the entity for which you are applying for. Section 3 is the qualifying individual full legal name section. In this section, you will list the qualifier's information. Remember, the qualifier is a person that meets the experience requirements and will be responsible for the direct supervision and control of the construction operations. The qualifier is also the person who takes the examinations. On line 6, you will list any previous or current license numbers you've held. You will also need to list the percentage of the new business owned by the qualifier. For example, if you are the only person that will be listed on the license, you would enter 100%. On line 7, you will need to indicate what position will be held by the qualifier. Each entity has different personnel requirements. You will need to make sure that you have listed all positions, depending on the entity that you have selected. And you can find more information on pages 2 and 4 of the application instructions that will help you complete this section. Line number 8 is where you're going to sign and date your application. Next, section 4. Section 4 is the personnel full name, legal names and addresses. This is where you're going to list the personnel information for all remaining personnel that's going to be listed on your license. For example, if you're applying for a corporation, you're going to need to indicate who will be the responsible managing officer or employee, the president, the secretary, and the treasurer. Again, more information can be found on page 4 of the application instructions. If you will have more than 4 people on your license, you can make additional copies of this page here and include it with your application. For corporations and LLCs, you're going to want to make sure that all the personnel that you have listed with the Secretary of State is listed in this section here. All personnel that will be listed on the license must sign the application in section 4. Section 5 is a series of yes or no questions, so we're not really going to cover that here. Section 6. You may be granted credit towards the 4-year experience requirement based on your education. Question number 17 asks if you have completed an educational or apprenticeship program. You will need to submit official sealed transcripts if you would like to be considered for this credit. If you attended formal training or an apprenticeship program, you will need to provide a certificate of completion. Get those sealed transcripts sent directly to you. Then you can include it with your application packet. Do not have the program send the transcripts directly to CSLB. You don't want to take the chance that we're not able to match them up with your application. So get them mailed to you, leave them sealed, send them in with your application. CSLB may grant you up to 3 years of credit on your education. This credit is not based on a year-to-year basis, meaning if you have a 2-year college degree, you won't necessarily be granted the 2 years of credit towards this experience requirement. You may qualify for this credit regardless of when you completed your education. The 10-year time frame does not apply to education. You may also apply for this credit even if your education was received out of the country. If your degree is in any other language other than English, it has to be translated. Now we will discuss the Certificate of Work Experience, Part 1. Part 1 will be filled out by you, the applicant. Here, you're going to list the information for your employer where you gained the experience. If you were self-employed when you gained this experience, you're going to want to mark the box in line number 2. If you are applying for a B general construction license and will be using experience obtained while working on your own property, make sure to mark the box in line number 4.